Welcome to the second of four webinars that we have in this series on Lutheran Service Builder. Today's topic is on bulletins and bulletin formats, and we are glad that you are here to be a part of this particular training session. Let me introduce myself. I'm Tim Burke, and I'm a software support technician. I've been here at Concordia Technology Solutions for just a little over 9 years, going on 10 years. And helping me today is my manager, Rod Kiles, and he'll be providing support on kind of the back end of the webinar. You won't see him on the camera, but he'll be handling the questions that you input into the questions window throughout the webinar. So I just appreciate his help in today's webinar. All right, let's talk about the training. It comes in four sessions. Yesterday, we talked about service planning and global search. Today's topic is on bulletins and bulletin formats. Coming up tomorrow is the one on presentation and presentation formats. That's when you're using PowerPoint or Media Shout 6, I believe. And then the fourth one on Thursday is on My Worship Resources and other add-ons and custom elements. That's going into a much deeper understanding of Lutheran Service Builder if you want to take it to that level of customizing it even further. But today's session is on bulletins and bulletin formats. Let's talk about a few housekeeping things here at the beginning. I plan on having 50 minutes for presentation, and then we'll include another 10 minutes to kind of round out the hour at the end. I want you to know that all attendees are muted. That way we can get through the training smoothly without interruption. But I do want you to ask questions throughout. If there are any views that we currently have on the display that you might have a question about, go ahead and type in your question in the questions window. Rod is here helping to answer those throughout the session, so feel free to ask questions while they're fresh on your mind. And just another reminder that the recording will be shared after the webinar. You might need to give us a couple days to get the video reviewed and a link sent out to you who registered. And then we'll also have the videos available in our resource center sometime after that. Today, the training goal is by the end of today, you will know how to prepare a complete service folder and export it from Lutheran Service Builder. The outline is we'll talk about inserting, selecting, and removing service elements from our order of service. We'll look at how to change how elements appear in the service, saving custom liturgies, and customizing bulletin formats, and exporting that bulletin then to Microsoft Word, where they can then be printed. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll bring up our Lutheran Service Builder application. I'm currently at the, let's see, let me get the cursor over here. I'm currently at the URL we spoke about yesterday, and that is app.lutheranservicebuilder.com. We're on the main calendar view when you first come here to the page. And as I mentioned yesterday, make sure that you're signed in. If you see the word sign in the upper right corner, you still need to sign into the application, into your account. So I'll click on sign in. My email and password are already filled in for me, and so I can click the sign in button. And here we arrive on the current month, June 24th, and the service that we worked on yesterday. We named it 8 a.m. early service, and we'll continue on right from where we ended yesterday. And I'll go ahead and click on that particular service on the calendar. Oh, before I do that, actually, let me go ahead and create one other service on the calendar. Let's say that, and I might use this a little bit later on, but let's say that on Thursday, this coming, well, not this week, Thursday, but the following week, Thursday on the 20th, I'm talking about right here on the calendar. I'm going to create, let's say there's going to be a funeral service. So what I'll do in order to create a service, I'm going to click right on the date with my mouse, and it allows me to create, in a way, an ad hoc service that's not in the lectionary for the church. I've picked the date, June 20th already. Here I can click in the date cell and choose a different date if I'd like. The holiday, I'm not going to go with the Pentecost 5 holiday. We're going to scroll down what's offered here in the scrollable list, and I'm going to choose funeral. And then it automatically changed the name for me to funeral. I could add even a name of a person here that we want to have the funeral for. We'll click plan the service, and it opens up the service plan like we talked about yesterday. Uh, you'll notice the tab there. And then I've also mentioned that your calendar then becomes a column here on the left side. We're currently here in the funeral service for John Smith, but we have access to the service that we made yesterday for the prior Sunday. So I have both of these services available. I'm going to go ahead and click on the cross here in the upper left corner just to look, go back to the calendar and see the way that appears, then having the new funeral service here on Thursday that we can work with a little bit later on. Once again, I'm going to go back to 8 a.m. early service on Sunday. We'll click on that service, and we've arrived here on the service plan where we left off yesterday. And so just a brief review. We've got all of the readings that are being pulled in from the lectionary already for us. And we've already chosen 5 hymns that we were anticipating using in the service. They're not in any kind of order. All we're doing here in the service plan is bringing the resources together kind of in a summary fashion. And then once we go into prepare a bulletin view, that's when we'll place all of these resources in the spots that they belong. We've also chosen the order of service, the divine service setting 3, and we also chosen additional rite to add to the service, so I can show you what that looks like as well. Let's scroll down a little bit. The usage here we have set to the default at the moment, which is just a one-time service during the Sunday morning. And we can still change that to any amount of times that we might use it. And we've also added some notes from yesterday's session as well. I did want to possibly add just yet one other additional rite here. You probably normally wouldn't have necessarily 2 rites being performed on a Sunday morning, but I'm going to go ahead and we're going to add in, well, we can scroll down, or what we can do here on the top too is just begin to type in confirmation. And I'm going to select that as well. So we have 2 rites, the rite of holy baptism and the rite of confirmation included in our service. And our service has communion too. And so you probably wouldn't normally have that many events in a way happening in one Sunday morning, but we plan on keeping the congregation there all morning long. But I want to show you, because baptism appears in a different spot in the order of service, and confirmation does as well. And then you'll just get an example of both of those being added to a service. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and come out of that. Is there anything else I need to point out? Yesterday, we did talk about being able to still access the propers there. Once you have seen your propers, then you get into the service and you get to the service plan. And then once we have the service planned, then we go up to the upper right corner and we see the prepare bulletin option. That's where we're working today. Underneath that is prepare presentation, which will be Thursday's session, and prepare a playlist. We'll talk about that on Friday. So there's kind of a directional kind of thing happening here where you're starting from the left side and moving to the right through all of these different steps. Now, your church may not use PowerPoint presentations or the playlist, and so today might be the extent of how you use Lutheran Service Builder, and that's just fine. But we'll go through all the steps in this series of webinars. Let's go ahead and click Prepare Bulletin, I believe, at this point. All right, so we've arrived here in the window for preparing a bulletin. I do want to point out here in the upper right corner, I mean, we already know that the gear is there for settings, but there's a new drop-down menu here at the top. It's got the name of our service there currently, 8 a.m. early service. If we click on that phrase or the little drop-down arrow, you'll have the menu then of those steps we just talked about. We can always review the propers and go back to that view. Then we can click on Prepare Bulletin once again. And from here, we can go back to the service plan. We're in Prepare Bulletin. We could advance to the presentation or playlist modes from that control here in the upper right corner. On the blue bar at the top, let's go to the left side. Here we've got, a way to get back to the calendar view if we'd like. We've got a undo and redo arrows. We've got a tab here. That's the tab we're currently in. This is the document tab that has our order of service displayed in the main part of the window. And then we have an insert tab here that we'll use here in a little bit to insert additional elements into our order of service to customize it a little bit further. So here in the main view is our order of service. It's in a continuous format. There's no page breaks here. And this way it's just easier to work through the order of service. I'm scrolling through it now through the main part of the window. Here we are at the sermon and we're going down the page. Here's that confirmation, right? And where it's at least suggested you insert that into the service, on down to the bottom of the page where we have the acknowledgments. I'll go over to the right and use my scroll bar to quickly get back up to the top. So one of the, well, let's scroll a little bit past here where the baptism is inserted. I'll come back to that in a moment. But let's go down to the area of the service where the service of the word appears. Let's see, actually, before I go to the service of the word, let's talk about this toolbar here that appears underneath the top blue bar one. Here we got a button on the left side for exporting. That's what we'll use in a little bit to export this order of service to a Microsoft Word docx file. We could also export it to rich text format and to HTML. Besides that is a default bulletin format, and this comes in like a combination of two buttons here. I'm kind of boxing it in for you. This is where you can select other bulletin formats, which we'll be talking about a little bit later today. And this button on the right, the edit button, gives you the ability to edit the bulletin format that you're using. Next to that is a set of two buttons as well that currently has the order of service selected that we selected in the service plan. So this is Divine Service Setting 3. But if you get this far in the process of preparing the bulletin, you still have the opportunity to click on that drop down and change the order of service to something else if you found that you maybe selected the wrong one in the service plan originally. And then also right next to that order of service option is a save button. And so what you're able to do with that save button is save what you have here on the screen as a custom liturgy. You might make some changes to it. You might replace the intro it here or some of the other options, or add an element that you want in every one of your services, maybe a children's message. I'll try to remember to put that in a little bit later. And once you have those elements added or edited and you have the order of service looking the way that you'd like to have it, you can then click this save button that I have got the arrow pointing to, and that will then save this order of service so that you can use it going forward. Instead of choosing the standard Divine Service Setting 3, you can use the new custom one that you've already tweaked, saving you loads of time of having to make those changes every week. So keep that in mind. That's at the top. And then next to that is a web view of your order of service. I'll demonstrate what this looks like a little bit later. First of all, we do need to click the button to enable the web view. I'll do that once we've gone through the service. But for this web view demonstration, if any of you that are watching happen to have your cell phone, your mobile phone with you, I just want you to have them ready. We're going to use that mobile phone when we talk about the web view a little bit further on into the training session. Now let's talk about the order of service, and we're starting here with service of the word. You'll notice that when I hover over these different elements in the order of service, that they get like a light blue box outlined around that particular element. And if you click on that element, another tab will appear here at the top, a third tab letting you know what element it is that you've clicked on and that has the current focus in the order of service. So this is saying that what I've clicked on here, service of the word, is a heading, and then the toolbar underneath that is then the tools that are appropriate for the heading. So with the heading here, we could simply delete it if we don't need that in the service, or we can also click move, which if you click move, then, which I've done, by the way, then you'll notice that there's this blue line that kind of appears either above an element or below it, which would be above the next element on down, and that is the insert point. So if I wanted to move service of the word to, below the Kyrie, I could just click right here on the blue line, the insert point, and it moves service of the word below Kyrie. If I then click on service of the word again and click move, let's move it back up above the intro it and put it back where it belongs. So that's the two tools that are available for that element. If I then come down here to intro it and click on that, it shows a new tab here at the top for intro it, and then it gives us many more tools that are available for the intro it itself. So over here, let's begin and go left to right. There is the caption, and the caption is referring to the word intro it here. So if I click on the button, that will remove the caption line altogether. We want to keep that there at the moment. There is a sub-caption over here on the left side saying that this is Psalm 92, 12 to 15, and the antiphon on verse 1. So that's all important information that many churches like to have in their bulletin. We'll keep that there. The next two options here are two buttons, are kind of a pair. You can either choose text or none. For the content right now, text is depressed. And so if we were to click on none, just removes the intro it altogether and leaves the caption there. If that's the type of bulletin that you're preparing, you don't need the content, the detail, you just have captions, that would be an option. Let's go ahead and put text back. Now that the text is there, it does give us the additional tools for chanting. Here is the pointing button. Those are the little red asterisks and lines that we see appearing here in the introit. And so if the introit is chanted, you'll have pointing there by default. If you don't need the pointing there, go ahead and click the button and it removes all of the red asterisks from the introit. We'll go ahead and keep it there. Next to that, still dealing with chat, is the psalm tone selection box. Click on the drop down arrow and you can then choose any of the psalm tones that are there. I think I'll just go with B today, and it places then the psalm tone right above the introit, so that can be followed when that psalm is, or when that introit is sung. Next to that is a template. We won't worry about that right now, but this does give other templates. We'll use that during some of the readings. Then there is a button here to edit this particular element, the introit element, and that would cause then, if you edit this element, it would be a custom element, and we'll talk about that more tomorrow on Thursday, on My Worship Resources and other add-ons. We'll talk about customizing things a little bit further there. And then we also have the move button and the delete button as well for this element. The other thing I want to point out is this blue line that we see here on the left side of the introit. That means that there is an option for this part of the service, the introit. And as you might know already with the Lutheran Service book, sometimes in the liturgies, there's a left side option and a right side option that's shown in the Lutheran Service book. And so that's in a way, what this is implying that there's another option. Let me scroll down just a little bit, because when we click on this blue line right here where my cursor's at, it will then extend the options out. And so there's a psalm here or the option of another entrance hymn. So we actually have three options in this spot: an entrance hymn, the psalm, or the introit. And you just click on any one of those three. If you wanted the psalm in place, I just click on the psalm, and it then replaces the introit with the psalm. Or I can click on the blue line again and just refer back to the introit, and that's what we'll keep this particular time. Moving down the page, we'll click on the next element, and that is the Gloria Patri. I should mention too that as you click on these elements, on the right side of the page, you'll then see the search panel open with that particular element that you clicked on also highlighted. So you do have other options of the propers for 6B that could be clicked on, but I'm just letting you know that that's what's changing there on the left side. So when we click on the Gloria Patri down here, you'll then see that the search panel changes and has the Gloria Patri highlighted there from Divine Service Setting 3. Underneath that is the Kyrie. We click on that. You'll then again see that listed here on the tab, and then we have a whole new set of tools on the line underneath. Some of these I won't spend as much time on because we know that captions, what that does. In this case, we've got a couple other options besides text. We can add the melody, and so that would put the Kyrie with a melody to sing with it. We've got a setting. Since we're in Divine Service Setting 3, there is a full setting of the music for the liturgy elements. It won't change your hymns in Lutheran Service Builder. We just have a melody for all of the hymns. Those are the engravings that have been made, pre-made, and are in the system, and we don't have a full setting for those as of this point in time, but we do have it for Divine Service Setting 3 in liturgy. I'll click on the setting. Watch carefully here where, currently we have the melody shown there. When I click setting, then it changes to the 4-part harmony. We got parts for sopranos and altos, tenors, and bass. They're a full setting of the music, or none, we'll take it out. So we'll go back to text at the moment. Then we also have an edit button to customize it if we'd like, the ability to move or delete this service element. Besides this toolbar up here at the top, for every element that you have selected, you can right click on that element. So let me right click on the element, and you've got a context menu where you could copy this button, or using this option to copy. That would do a very similar thing to edit here at the top. You can edit the caption, you can edit the subcaption. Again, subcaption is over here on the right, caption is there on the left. You can, copy will just copy this element as it is. Here's the edit button that matches up with the edit button at the top. And then you also have move and delete. So many of these toolbar buttons that we have at the top navigation bar are included in the context menu that you use when you right click on the element. Those appear. Underneath that is the Gloria in Excelsis that appears here on the right in the search panel. You've got other variations or other versions of the Gloria in DS 1, 2, 4. And so there are other options that are shown here. Hymn versions of the Gloria are here as well. And so you can click on any one of these options to bring in one of the other Glorias from one of the other divine services if you prefer that in that particular spot. Also for the Gloria, we do have a couple other tools that I want to point out here. In this case, we have already seen text and melody and setting. Let's just get the setting on there. Now the text with setting, this is a new option available for this particular element. And that will, then you'll notice that there is a part here in the beginning for pastor to sing, and then the congregation then comes in with the C. And sometimes I realize that, pastors may not be comfortable with singing or chanting things of that nature. So you can make a text and setting, which then turns the pastor's response here into a spoken response, and then the congregation responds with singing. And so we do have, in this case, a text and setting as well as a text and melody. And so right now we're looking at the full, I should say, put it this way, the full 4 parts, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, but we can change it to text and melody, and that will just keep a simple melody then for the congregation to follow if you prefer that option. And then here on the toolbar at the top, we have once again edit, move, and delete. Let's go on further down. We've got the salutation and collect of the day with the same options, melody setting, text and setting, text and melody to have the pastor's parts spoken. We've got a template option here, and edit and move and delete. Let's go on down to the Old Testament reading. And here we have, again, caption, text, and none. We'll remove the reading, but having it shown there. You will notice here that there are the verse numbers. And so I'm trying to remember now if somebody asked about that. I think there was a question at the end of the session yesterday on getting the verse numbers. You can find the verse numbers here, generally speaking. In the order of service. So all you'd have to do for the Old Testament reading is right click on it and choose copy, and then you could open up a Word document and paste just the Old Testament reading in. Let's see. Yeah, and you could put that in a Word document and just paste that element into your order of service if you were working with some kind of template outside of Lutheran Service Builder. Next to that, there's another option here that I want to talk about this time, a template. Templates are what kind of encapsulates the scripture reading here itself. This is what we would call the content, and the template is what follows the content and maybe what even introduces the content above it. And that's what we have available here in templates. So the standard, or there's a no template used. There's this particular one. Let's see if I point out down here, this is the word of the Lord, thanks be to God. So we can see that the content is mentioned here. That's just going to bring in whatever scripture reading is part of the lectionary this week, and then put that particular standard response afterwards. If we scroll down just a little bit farther, there's the daily office response. Oh Lord, have mercy on us, thanks be to God. There is also another option here with introduction to the Old Testament that puts in the wording. The Old Testament reading is from whatever book it is, chapter, and then whatever chapter it is, and then it fills in the content for you, and then it will give you the response at the end. So let's go ahead and choose this one since this is the Old Testament reading, and I'll show you how that changed. We'll click on that template. And so now what we gain in this case is that additional introduction. Everything else is pretty much the same. And so now, in this case, it would be read that the Old Testament reading is from Ezekiel chapter 7. I mean, it's also shown here in the subcaption, but if you like to introduce your scripture readings there, you can use the template option here at the top to make those additions real quick. Here we have then the psalm. You'll notice we'll click on the psalm. Once again, there's pointing available, the psalm tone available, edit, move. There is a template here, and we also see the blue bar here on the left for options. Let's go ahead and click on that and show you that the gradual then could be chosen instead. I'll click on that just for a variation here. And the gradual, once we click on that, does have pointing and psalm tone. Let's go with B again and continue on. Here is the epistle. I'll click on that. The toolbar changes at the top. We have the ability to add a different response. Let's say we don't want the Old Testament here. The epistle, there's one with an introduction. So I'll click on that one. and it adds the epistle is from 2 Corinthians chapter 5. So it's filling in the content again and filling in the book and chapter automatically for you based on the lectionary. Following that, there's a rubric, and that's a direction on standing and sitting. When I click on that element itself, then you see the tab once again here at the top, change the rubric, letting you know what it is. There is no search option here for rubrics on the right, so that search panel disappears. And then the two options we have on the toolbar there are to move and delete it. I'll go ahead and just click delete. We come to the Alleluia, click on the blue bar. Basically the same in this case, or that's the option maybe selected. There's also the option for the verse of the day. And then there is an option here that says tract. If you hold your cursor over these little red triangles, there's usually a little bit more information that the tract is usually omitted during the Pentecost season. And so that gives you a little further explanation if it applies to the season that you are in. But we'll just go ahead with the Alleluia as is. The Holy Gospel is here. We'll click on that. It's already got the introduction to there by the pastor. And we'll just keep all of this the way that it is. Let's see, there's melody, there's setting options at the top. So that's, we'll just keep that as is. And then let's say after the gospel, I want to insert another element. And so let's go to the top and give a demonstration of this option here, insert. When you click the insert option here on the tab at the top, then you've got a toolbar that's specific for inserting, and you get to choose whatever type of element that you want to insert right after the gospel. In this case, I just want to insert, let's see, not a heading, but maybe just a caption. Right now, by default, it's got rubric depressed. That's why the button is gray, but I want to go ahead and click on caption. And so it knows I want to insert that. When I then hover over the order of service, you'll see the blue insert line point show up, and I want to come right here after the gospel, click on that blue insert line, and it replaces it here with the word caption. I can then click right here on the screen, maybe backspace over the word caption, and just put children's message. And you could even put a title to that if you want. It's probably just the tick mark there that I didn't get. All right. There we go. And so now I've inserted another element into the service. So this insert option, you've got a number of options. I did a caption. You can insert a hymn anywhere, a reading anywhere, a prayer, a proper, a custom element, or a write into any point in the service. I could click on custom element, bring my insert point right, let's say underneath the children's message. It puts a new entry here in the order of service for element. And then over here on the right, I can search for an element to put in the service. It will give you some options in sections here, like common elements, responses that you can choose from. You can scroll down, you got creeds. I believe there was a question yesterday at the end too from someone that asked about, is the small catechism included? And I gave the wrong answer. I said, I don't believe it is. It's not there as a whole, but you are able to select any of the individual commandments here, in this case, any of the articles, any of the petitions, any of the small catechism parts on holy baptism, etc. So that's all available here in one section under Luther's small catechism. Going further down, you've got the antiphons and an uncategorized area. That's for custom resources that you might have created over time. So we'll leave that one for Thursday's session when we cover my worship resources. Let's go ahead. I'm going to just click on the element that we have here in the order of service and click delete to remove that. I just wanted to show you how the insert option works and what's available. We'll click on the Nicene Creed here, bring focus on that element, we'll click on the blue bar to see the options. Then we have the Apostles' Creed and the Athanasian Creed. And so we'll just keep it with the Nicene Creed. We come down here to the bottom, the hymn of the day. I'll click on that. And when I click on the element of the hymn of the day, you'll notice then the search panel opens with the hymns. And that is where then what the work that we did in our service plan puts all of the hymns that we had anticipated using in this service. We may or may not use all of these. You can see then underneath the section for service plan that then the standard search, the hymn search column begins with hymn of the day and hymns for other readings. And so you'll often see, like I've got the hymn 500, which we chose yesterday from the hymn of the day section, etc. But it pulls all of those hymns that you felt like you might use on this particular day to a section at the top. And now we can place where they go in the service. I can click on 500, Creator Spirit, and it puts then the hymn in that place where the hymn of the day placeholder was in our order of service. And so once we have the hymn selected, then you'll notice then the toolbar at the top also changes. We've got text and melody, none. We know what those are. Here's a new button, stanzas. So right now this particular hymn has 4 stanzas. We might choose just to sing stanzas 1 and 4. So just the 2 first and last. And you'll notice here that once I've made that selection, then our text version of the hymn in the order service is also changed. It's also giving us the Trinitarian symbol there for the 4th verse. And the copyright information is included, showing that this is public domain in this case. Going on down the line, we've got the sermon. And we could, once again, just click right here in the caption, and pastor could enter in the sermon title here. Let's just put it salvation, and or whatever the name of the sermon, the title of the sermon could be. You can add that to your service. There is a response here, the votum. There's another rubric here, which I'll just right click on this time and click delete. Could have used the delete on the toolbar at the top as well. We've got the offertory, and whether that is melody setting. We've got another rubric. This time I'll use the delete up here. Offering, another rubric. Now you can keep those rubrics there if it's important to your church. Now we come to a spot where that confirmation rite that I added to the service appears, and you'll notice that it's a green bar going across the screen, and there is the option here whether to include it and insert the rite at this point where it's suggested or not. You could also just click on the little X here on the far right to remove this rite if you decide not to use it or it's not needed. But I'll go ahead and click on insert rite. And all that did is take away the green button. It now has inserted confirmation into our service, but you'll notice that you don't really see any content. All we have here is just the heading, confirmation. The offertory appears above, the prayer of the church underneath, but there is no content. And so after you have inserted a rite, you do have access to then a content button up here on the toolbar. So if we click on contents, it will expand the confirmation into a heading and then include the whole confirmation part of the service into your order of service. It's all represented here with this gray line that you can faintly see running vertically down the page. As I scroll through it, that gray line continues to be there, and that is all of the confirmation part of the service, including some of the notations here, which you could click on and delete if you didn't want those in your bulletin. And then it picks up after confirmation right with the prayer of the church. So let's continue on here. Prayer of the church is shown when you click on that. You can move that or delete it. We've got then another heading, service of the sacrament. We've got the preface, clicking on that, and that has things like melody, text and setting, text and melody. There you've got other versions of the preface available on the right. And, let's continue on. You get the idea. We don't have to go into each of these. We've got distribution starting right here, and we've got a distribution hymn. Let's go ahead and pick another couple of hymns here. Stanzas. I mean, usually you use all of them during communion, but just for keeping things simple in this bulletin, I'll go to one stanza. In fact, I can select none and then just select one stanza there. We've got the Thanksgiving, the benediction, a hymn to depart. Let's go ahead. I don't think we've, if you by chance happen to click on one of the hymns in your service plan that you've already chosen further up in the order of service, it will put a red triangle there saying that this hymn has been used more than once in the service. So we'll go ahead and put it as 790. And then we've got our acknowledgments at the bottom. Let's go ahead back to the top. I wanted to show, the baptism shows up here at the top of the service. Now that we've done the rite of confirmation, you kind of get the idea here. If we had a baptism in the service, it suggests that you place it here in the beginning of the service, and then it also puts a pinkish red background behind confession and absolution, which is letting you know that this section that's highlighted in a pink or red color will be removed if you insert the rite of holy baptism. So let's go ahead and insert the rite. Right after that is the service of the word, by the way, just for to note that. But I'll go ahead and click insert. It puts holy baptism as a rite in the service. Now we have to click on it, first of all, and then we have the content option here. We'll go ahead and click contents. It adds then an option for the baptismal hymn, which you could choose either from your service plan, or you can continue to search by hymn number like we did yesterday. Then the baptism is referenced here on the left side with that gray line going down through the Lord's Prayer. There's another processional hymn, some dialogue back and forth, and then it has a rubric here of all return to their places, and then it picks up at the service of the word. So that's the rite of baptism, so that you can see that you don't have to add any of this yourself and type that in as an added rite. All of the content is there. It's just a matter of remembering to click the content button, and we get calls about that quite often. So I wanted to point that out. So we've got our service together. Let's go back to the tab. The last thing that I clicked on was the rubric, but I want to go back to the document tab to export this service. And before we do that, let's do this quick little thing with the web view. So I'm going to go ahead and enable web view. And when we do that, it then creates a URL on the internet for this order of service that we've been working on. And now a lot of churches will just highlight this URL right here and then copy it, and they can place it, I suppose, in their bulletin, but you would place it a lot of times on your website. And then people clicking on that link, visitors to your website or members of your church that watch from home, maybe stream it, they can click on the link on the website, and that would take them to a web view of this order of service. In fact, let me go ahead and copy it. We'll open up another tab here real quick. It looks like it's displaying on your screen, so we'll go ahead and so here's our service. It's Concordia Church, 8 a.m. early service, and we scroll down, we had baptism, all of the changes that we made. So a person sitting at home could follow along with the service. But another thing we can do with this is copy this same URL. We can go to a source on the internet, and I just found this by searching for QR code generator, free QR code generator in a Google search, and it gave me that option, and that's the URL that I'm currently at. I can just paste that URL that we got from Lutheran Service Builder into the link here on the main part of this particular services website. It shows the QR code here on the right. I click Save. Shows me the type of file that I want to make it. I want to use the PNG because I would like to put this on my website. And let's go ahead and I'll just put this, here in this folder. I can open the copied file. I'll bring it over from my other screen. Yeah, that should be showing up on your screens too. So if you have your mobile phone handy and you have either a QR code reader or just open up your camera app and hold the camera up to that QR code. I'm doing that with my phone here, by the way, too. Then you should get a web link to the order of service, just as we saw it a moment ago. But any member in your church, let me bring up my phone here. I don't know what it will show up and look like there, but you can see the order of service, and I can scroll through it right there on my phone. So that way you could provide this QR code in your bulletin as well if you don't put the order of service. And then, those tech-minded people in your church could get out their phone, scan the code with their camera app, and get the order of service right there on their phone, follow along with it while they're sitting in the pew at church or while they're sitting at home if they're unable to make it to church, or really any visitor to your website. And you've done that all just for free and with that particular web view option here in Lutheran Service Builder. All right, let's continue on and let's talk about the bulletin format. So right now, what we've got here in the order of service view is the current bulletin format. When I click on that drop down, I've got a number of other options for bulletin formats that I've already set up. Most of the time, by default, most of you should mainly just have these top two, default and large print, I believe. Some of these other ones, I've got a Creative Worship and One and All Rejoice because I have those subscriptions. The legal folded I made, all captions I made, the letter folded I made, and the full setting. All of these are just additional formats that I've made, and we'll show you how you can do that as well. But right now, you might just see default and large print. Right now, what we've got displayed is the default bulletin format. I can choose large print, and you can see how that changes what we have here on the screen. Let's go back up to the top of service here for Holy Baptism. And that would be for your large print version. And then you could click, actually export this out to DOCX. And this is just an all included right there along with your Lutheran Service Builder subscription. And we can go back to the default, and that would be for printing of your bulletin in the standard font sizes. But what we can do to change these formats, we can click the edit button right here, or we can click the settings icon in the upper right corner and choose bulletin formats there. So both of these options will basically get you to the same place. This one over here on the left that I pointed to again will open up the current default bulletin format that we're working in so that you can then edit or change the one that you have associated with a service. But going to the one here on the right will just take you to the bulletin format option as a whole and allow you then to choose from any of the bulletin formats here on the left. We can just click on default and work with that one. What shows up here then once you've selected a bulletin format is an order of service. Now this is not the order of service that we used here. It's just a sampling of different elements in a standard order of service. It's real short. It's a small scroll bar of just a few different items, and that allows us to see within this preview what all of the changes that we have available here on the left, how it will look when we apply them, when we apply the changes, and it gives us a sample order of service to see that. So here at the top, there are 3 tabs. We have style, layout, and content. Those are all ways of changing your bulletin format. In the current tab, style, you have the ability to change the font. So right now, by default, this default bulletin format uses Times New Roman at a font size of 10.5 for all of the sections in the order of service that are considered body. That would be like just the sections, the main sections with the content in them, the body. There are other options here for section. There's headings. And so choosing a heading would be that item there. And whoop, that snapped up to body. I'm sorry, that's supposed to be here under heading. But that would, in clicking on heading, would then allow you, this is currently Trebuchet MS, and it's at 20 point. You can change the way that heading font looks, changing the section here to caption. What that is referring to are these captions right here, and you can change the font, whether they're bold or not, the size. Having the caption section selected, subcaption would be give you the ability to change these subcaptions. And the rubrics would allow you to change what these lines look like in your order of service. And then finally, the copyright. And that is what is referred to here at the bottom of the hymns, the copyright information about the hymns. So that's a Verdana, and it's a small point size of 8 point. So we could, let's see, let's go back to body. That's usually a good one to work with. Let's say we wanted to change this to another font. You can scroll through the list here of all the fonts, kind of like you do in Microsoft Word, or you can begin just to type in at the top. Let's go with Cambria here. And so right now, all of the body has changed now to Cambria. That's what's showing in all of these sections. We could bold that, bolded the hymn in this case, and not the dialogue at the bottom. We could italicize it. There's the hymn. You could underline it. We've got title case, all caps, all lowercase. And so there's just a lot of options in order, if you want to edit and change your fonts. And below that is changes that will affect the paragraphs. Let's go ahead, and this is left justified or aligned left. This is center aligned. And so all of the content now is just aligned here center. You might create a bulletin where it's aligned to the right. Maybe that's what you like. Or let's go here. You'll notice for this next item on the right, which is justify. Right now, you might see here in this paragraph how the lines are kind of staggered there on the right side. If you click justify, it kind of nicely boxes everything and adds additional space to where it's a nice box and cleans that up a bit. So you might use that justify option as well. Let's go back to left, or line left. Then you've got space before paragraphs, space or left indent, space after paragraph. It's kind of these two on top of each other, before and after paragraphs. And this is indent, left indent, right indent. Here is a line spacing. If we were to choose line spacing where there's a 1, I'll increase that number. And you can see there in the main part of the window how the line spacing is really providing much more space between each and every line. We'll go back to just 1. So you can see how those changes affect the way your bulletin will look when you apply this format. If we click on layout at the top, that gives us the ability to change the page size here. So if it's letter or legal that you're using, if it's portrait or landscape, and if you plan to fold this into a booklet form, you'd probably make this legal paper and have it landscape and then fold it. And that allows you to set it up for that type of formatting. And that's kind of what I did with the one I created here and saved, but I did it with a letter piece of paper instead. You've got control over your margins, top, bottom, left, and right, by increasing or decreasing the little arrows there on the right side. And then here for music, uh, what we've got here is the ability to automatically scale music if you're going to be using the melody option, or if you're going to use a fixed scale. Let me just demonstrate what that looks like. I have to make one change here in the content tab to help us out. There we go. So I'll be adjusting this right here. You'll notice that there's some space here on the right, and we may want to automatically scale the hymn so it makes use of the width of the paper, the full width that it can. We put a check mark here in the box, and before I do that, just kind of watch this margin here on the right side. I'm going to click on it now, and it just enlarged a little bit, making use of every available spot on the page. And that would be maybe more evident if we were back in, well, let's see, let's take out folded. Well, there you go. Take out the folded, and the landscape shows that this just really increased the size of the hymn, and it just snaps into place based on the width. So that's what the automatic scale will do. Let's get this back to landscape and folded. Oh, and then if you take the automatic scale out, you can work with a fixed scale and just increase the numbers, and so it will enlarge that, or we could decrease it and it will just be a fixed scale. We could decrease it quite a bit, and you can see it will just keep on shrinking that engraving, that image of the hymn quite a bit. So that's where I suggest that you simply use the automatic scale to make use of the width of the paper. Content will go there. Now this is, earlier when we did changes to our order of service, we made individual changes. We took out individual rubrics and made single changes to elements. But this is the place where you can do it in a way globally across the whole order of service. If you want just to remove all headings, let me get there we go. So here's our heading. We could remove all headings in the order of service by unchecking the box, and all headings then are gone throughout the whole service. We could, instead of removing each individual rubric, just come here and remove all the rubrics from the default bulletin format. For hymns, you could across the board make them all visible or take them all out. You can set your hymn content to be text or to be melody by default. And then that way, when you're going into the order of service, you don't have to change each hymn to add the notes individually. You can just do it here. And then when you open up this order of service with this bulletin format, all of the melody lines will be there for you already. You can choose to show the caption of the hymn, always or never or default. The caption format can be the name, or, and this is referring to this part of the hymn. I'll choose some of these. Right now it's the hymn number and then the name. If we choose on the roll, we'll then replace that with hymn of invocation now instead of the hymn number and the name. Or you can choose roll and name. And now that puts both options here, hymn of invocation and the number and the name, all there on the display. You can choose your subcaption, and there are some other references to other things there. Right now, the pound, STS pound, means selected stanzas, and so that's automatically putting that there. You don't have to type that in. It's using like a generic hashtag type of system here on the right, and it would be showing the stanzas, the selected stanza. We could add pound, PG, pound for page. Maybe we'd put that in front of the stanzas. So I'll type in pound, PG, pound, and put a space there, maybe another space. And then we'll click out of there. And then you'll notice now that in the subcaption, it lists the page number as well as stanzas. So that's how these little codes kind of work to add the content that you want listed. You can choose to show stanza numbers or remove that, and the stanza numbers are gone. You can omit the number from the caption, so all that is pointing to is that particular number, and it would just be removing that from the name there if you'd like. Because some people may like the number over here on the left, or they may like to put it in the subcaption, whatever your preference is. I'll go ahead and set it back. Then we get down to the liturgy section here and what's available there. Boy, I see I'm at the top of the hour here. I apologize, going a little bit long. But you've got visibility, if liturgy is visible or not, whether you want the melody or the setting there by default, whether you want to show the caption always, never, or the default. The subcaption, again, it's defaulting to pound, page, pound to show page numbers, but you could add any of the other codes. Using symbols for speakers, and that's referring to these symbols. If you take that out, then it will replace it with the words pastor and congregation instead of P and C. And emphasize decision fields. That is talking about here in those spots of a service that might be like for baptism where you're referring to a name. It's emphasizing those names right now with an underline. If you take that out, it removes the underline and just kind of puts them into a little bracketed case. Underneath that, the last section here is all about the propers. And so we can make them visible or not. If there's like a chanted proper, we can add the setting or the melody. Again, default, showing the caption, always, never. If you want the role and the other options there for caption format, the subcaption there. Some of these other options in checkboxes here show chant pointing. You could just remove chant pointing across the board, so you don't have to deal with it then when you're in the order of service. You could add or remove verse numbers in the scripture readings, and so that's if you prefer not to have them there, you can just remove the check mark. You can show headings. Let's see. I think there's a place where that will. Let's see. Headings. There we go. So adding a heading, then within a scripture reading, we'll add the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes in this particular example. And then the last thing is show words of Christ in red. So if you choose that, it will then give you a red font in the order of service, but that's only going to matter if you create your services in color font and print color. So those are the changes that you make. Once you make any changes to your bulletin format, just make sure to click save. And what I should also note before I click save is that there is a little white dot in front of this default bulletin format that we're working on. And that white dot is showing that there's unsaved changes. So once I click the save button down here, we'll click it now, then that little dot will disappear. And you won't see it there on the left side any longer. You can see other options. Let's say the all captions bulletin format would look simply like that. So you could create something to that effect if that's all you have for your bulletin inserts on a Sunday morning. And you can always give us a call if you want to go over some of that detail. But hopefully going over all of this information this morning really has prepared you to make those edits that you would like to make. Let's exit out of the bulletin format here in the upper right corner after we've clicked save. We now have our order of service. Let's go back to the document tab. And we're still using the default bulletin format, and any changes that we made, I think it was mainly just the font style that I kept and was part of the save. Now we can go ahead and click export. We can click on Microsoft Word. It shows up like this. We can choose where we want it to appear. I'll put it on my desktop so I can delete it a little bit later on. We can open it up in Microsoft Word. I'll have to bring that over from my other monitor here. And now that's ready to go. So that's taken what we've learned yesterday in planning the service, bringing the resources together, and then taking it to that next step of inserting and deleting and selecting different elements within the order of service, and then styling that order of service with our bulletin format and exporting it out to this finished product. And also, having talked about the QR code and the web view for your website. So I believe that's all that I need to go over there. Let's go ahead and bring up our PowerPoint and continue on from there. So this is just a review of some of those codes that are available for the subcaption. You've got the page number, which is pound, PG pound. You've got to show the stanzas by default, STS. You've got the name of the selected content in the KG kind of package, and then the ref, REF, to show the related scripture versus, the related scripture for that element of the service. So those are all options there that are available. So the ways that you can get support from us here at CTS, Concordia Technology Solutions, you can visit the online help center just from the information center that we talked about yesterday in the lower right corner of your screen of your application, the letter I. You can use in-app chat, which is the phrase to start a chat right from that information center. You can give us a call at 1-800-346-6120 through our normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5. And you can always email us at support@cts.cph.org. Just a reminder for the training this week, we've finished and completed service planning and global search yesterday. We completed bulletins and bulletin formats today. But come back tomorrow if you're interested in talking about presentation and presentation formats as they relate to PowerPoint and Media Shout 6. And then on Thursday, we'll talk about my worship resources and other add-ons that are available for Lutheran Service Builder. So we'll open it up for questions. Now, please type in your questions into the GoToWebinar. I think it's a questions window. It might not be called chat. Remember that a recording will be made available somewhere within 48 hours. Just be gracious with us, so it might take us a couple days to get it out, the link out there. And if you're watching this video at a later point in time, you can always email us with your questions at support@cts.cph.org. And I do want to thank you for watching today here. So for those of you that might have to leave, we're a little bit beyond the top of the hour, but certainly understand, and I thank you for attending today's webinar. For those of you that want to stick around, just in case there's some questions that we might cover here publicly, that would be fine too. I'll go ahead to the previous window here for questions and answers, and we'll look at what is available here. And all right, so there's I so much appreciate Rod's help here in answering some of these questions that came through. And some of these questions that may have been asked, I probably won't get through all of them, but some of them may be more appropriate for a support call because they get a little bit more involved, but I'll kind of glance over some of these, see if it would be good to share. Yeah, Myra had asked, does it save the changes to the default bulletin for future bulletins, or do you have to make the changes each time you do the bulletin? So hopefully that question was kind of answered for Myra, that once we, well, although she did ask this just recently, yeah, if you save some of those styling changes in your bulletin, that will then appear from this point forward for the default bulletin format that you're using when it comes to styling. Now, when you're talking about your order of service, making changes there, let's say you replace the psalm with the gradual, and then you want the gradual to be there in your order of service in the future. That's where you would, let's maybe go back to that and I'll just point it out. We're going to talk about this, I think, more on Thursday with My Worship Resources. But just to address Myra's question, we made some changes here. Holy baptism, that's not as good of an option to talk about, but I just talked about here having replaced the gradual with the psalm. So changes like that, you might go through your whole order of service and make the tweaks and changes that you want on a week-to-week basis. You wouldn't want to apply any of your hymns. Don't make those selections yet, but just kind of use the order of service as is without applying particular selections for hymns, but content itself, changing the psalm to the gradual, and then click the save button. What that will do is it will ask you, well, what do you want to call this this order of service? Now, by default, it's still using the order of service that you had up on the screen, but it adds the word, well, let me change that. It adds the word my in front of it, and that just customizes it a little bit more. What you could do is just select this and say modified service. And maybe we could even say modified BS3 service, divine service setting 3. Let's get the caps there. 3, and then save that. And then from that point on, if we go to let's just go to the calendar. I'm going to click on today, the 11th. Yeah, let's plan this service. Now, when I click on empty for the order of service, I could search for modified, and there is the service that I tweaked, and choose that. It gets placed over here from having clicked on it on the right. And now I'm using that order of service that I tweaked from this point forward. I can always select the modified DS3 service instead. So hopefully that answers your question, Myra. Let's see. Yes, this question from Becky. If we use the formatting in LSB for folding, legal size bulletin covers, would those formatting options come across when you export to Word? They would. When you, let's say you use legal paper and you turn it landscape and you set the book fold mode on, it will come over into Microsoft Word with those selections already made. If you went into your printer options, you would see that it already has book fold mode, legal paper, set landscape. So it will hold that. All right. Oh, this is a good question from Michael. Yeah, I apologize. Let's see. Let's go back. He was asking, so how do you create and save a new bulletin format? So let's go to the gear, go to bulletin formats. Yeah, I saw these buttons and I wanted to remember to point them out and I failed to. Apologize. Michael, yeah, down here in the lower left corner is where you can create new bulletin formats. You click on the new bulletin format option right here, and this will, depending on your subscriptions, most likely most of you will have access to default and large print. These two come with the subscription. So if you purchase the subscription, you'll have it there. If not, you won't see those. But you can start a new bulletin format based on the default. I'll click on default and it will add a new line here. I could then change the name to my modified format. And that way, from this point forward, I could make all of the changes that I want over here on the right, according to my liking. And then I could, from this point forward, use the bulletin format called my modified format from this point forward, and it will always stylistically, at least speaking, style your order of service for printing in Word that way. All right. I appreciate Rod's help so much. A lot of these are answered already. All right, Anne asks, I only ever see the melody button. I never seen the setting and text setting buttons. How can I make them available? Let's go to the order of service. Let's go to, let's see, we're in June here. Let's go to our 8 a.m. early service. Let's go to the prepare bulletin. So what, okay, Anne just answered back and said the options really do depend on the selected element. And that is exactly what I wanted to point out. Let's go down to the intro and just talk about what she was referring to. Let's go to the Kyrie. That's a good one. So depending on the element that you click on, you might have melody and setting there. If we click on Gloria, then in Excelsis then has a different set of buttons. So it really does depend on the element, whether there is a text and setting, depending on if there's a part that pastor would speak or not, whether those are going to be offered or not. So click on the element you want to see what formatting options you have on the toolbar. Very good. Glad you found that on your own, Anne. That was very good deducing yourself there. Working my way down the list here. There's just a lot of questions that were asked, but luckily Rod has answered a number of those. All right. I'm at the bottom here, and most of these were answered either by Rod or during the session itself. So I think we're pretty good there. Let's go ahead then and again and just display the thank you for watching the webinar. I hope to see many of your names here again tomorrow for PowerPoint presentation or the presentation and presentation formats, and then maybe again on Thursday for my worship resources. But thank you for attending today, and have a great day.